Uh, okay, so welcome. Matrix would like to welcome everyone, students, current students, faculty, BITS alumni, and others who have taken time out of their lives to join us this evening to hear Professor Kaushar Vaidya and listen to her last lecture. I would like to convey my special thanks to Professor Vaidya for taking out time from her busy schedule to deliver this last lecture, and to Professor Kumar Shankar Bhattacharya, faculty in charge of Matrix, for helping us in figuring out the logistics and organizing this event. So, the last lecture is a series of talks given by people in academia where they talk about what matters most to them, uh, like what wisdom would one like to impart to the future generations if they know that it was the last chance. This is sort of the primary question that one tries to answer while delivering the lecture. uh, in the last decade or so, similar talks have been going on at many universities across the world, and all these talks, just like ours, are inspired by a lecture that Professor Andy Pausch gave at Carnegie Mellon University in 2007 by the name of Really Achieving Your Childhood Dreams. Professor Pausch was suffering from pancreatic cancer, and the way he navigated his life experiences in that talk really inspired many conversations across the globe, one of which we'll have today. Uh, Matrix has been organizing the last lecture since the last 5 or 6 years. Previous speakers include Professor Ashok Kumar Sarkar, former director of BITS-Pilani campus, Professor Rishikesh Vaidya, Professor Surekha Panor, and Professor Kumar and Professor Shyam Sundar Balasubramaniam. It is our pleasure and honor to welcome Professor Kaushar Vaidya to deliver the next edition of the last lecture. Professor Vaidya completed her PhD in astronomy from the Graduate Institute of Astronomy at the National Central University in Taiwan in 2007, following which she did her postdoctoral research at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, USA. She joined BITS-Pilani in the Department of Physics in the year 2007. She has worked in various clubs in the institute. Like she is the faculty in charge of the astronomy club, and she has also mentored the team Anand in BITS Pilani, which are working towards building BITS Pilani's first nano satellite. Uh, I have personally known her through Association in Teaching Learning Center, which she headed for the last 2 years, which develops or and researches about developing the teaching learning pedagogy in higher education. Uh, so we think that Professor Vaidya is a very able candidate to deliver a lecture of this sort. And without taking any more of your time, I would like to welcome Professor Vaidya to please take on the stage and deliver the lecture. Thank you and welcome again.
Thank you, Soumitra. Thank you so much for your kind introduction. Let me get started with my presentations. Before I do that, I welcome you all for this lecture. I'm really looking forward to sharing my thoughts with all of you, and it's been an honor. Thank you, Matrix Club. So let me start by sharing my screen, and Soumitra, please tell me if you're able to see it all right.
Sure, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, the screen is visible.
Okay. So the screen is visible, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So love is the answer. And when you read this, you may wonder, just a second. Love is the answer, but what is the question? So the golden question is, how to be happy, successful, and prosperous in life? When we think about this question, the conventional answer is get a degree from a reputed institute, get a good degree from a reputed institute, join an MNC with hefty pay package, get married, and live happily ever after. Suppose you follow these 3 steps. Does it guarantee you of living happily ever after? These 3 steps assume that money is the single factor that can buy happiness. Let's find out what researchers have learned about whether money can buy happiness. Nobel laureates Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton found that emotional well-being rises with income, but only till a certain threshold. Beyond that, emotional well-being stops increasing altogether. So, if not money, then what is it that leads to happiness? The world's longest study on happiness, conducted at Harvard by generations of researchers, have found good relationships keep us happier and healthier. It's this single finding of that 75-year-long study which is still ongoing. So, if good relationships keep us healthier and happier, let's ask ourselves, what builds good relationships? Love is the foundation of good relationships, and therefore, love leads to happiness and success. Let's read these beautiful quotes to understand the significance of love in our lives. If you have love in your life, it can make up for a great many things you lack. But if you don't have it, no matter what else there is, it's not enough. You will find as you look back upon your life that the moments when you have really lived are the moments when you have done things in the spirit of love. Love matters the most because it makes life happy, successful, and prosperous. So, we briefly saw how love builds good relationships and that ensure happier and successful lives. Now, in the next section, let's discuss and learn the 3 principles and practices that tell us how we can make use of love to make our lives happy, successful, and prosperous. So, love is the answer because love of truth helps you know yourself. Love of beauty helps you love yourself. And love of harmony helps you accept yourself. Now, let's look at these 3 principles in greater detail, one by one. So let's try to know more about knowing yourself by answering these 2 questions. Why to know yourself and how to know yourself. Let's first discuss why to know yourself. How many bars do you see in this picture? Is it 3 or 4? I guess you agree that it's not possible to tell. So, what you see may not be what it is. And look at this example. Which of these 2 perspectives give us the complete truth of the object being perceived? Neither of this, right? So, your idea of truth depends on your perspective. And knowing yourself means going beyond what is obvious. Knowing yourself means developing newer perspectives to know the deepest side of you, the deepest core of you. Let's read these quotes to understand the significance of knowing yourself. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all the wisdom. Knowing others is wisdom. Knowing yourself is enlightenment. Let's find out what our Upanishad tells us about knowing yourself. So this is from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It reads, "You are what your deep driving desire is. As your desire is, so is your will. As your will is, so is your deed. And as your deed is, so is your destiny." So knowing yourself is essentially knowing what your deep driving desire is. Now, let's look at how to know yourself. You can know yourself by using techniques from three different domains: science, management, and spirituality. Let me share two techniques from each of these three domains. From science, let's discuss multiple intelligences and MB personality types. From management, let's discuss these two techniques of Joe Harry model and SWOT analysis. From spirituality, let's discuss these two methods, Ikigai and meditation. Howard Gardner described that human beings have 9 multiple types of intelligences. You may have 2 or more dominant intelligences in you. The different intelligences can be seen in this infographic. 3 of them are in your intelligent quotient, in the IQ domain, in the intelligent quotient domain. They are logical, mathematical, musical, and spatial. In the emotional domain, you have 2 of them, intrapersonal and interpersonal. You have 1 intelligence for languages. You have 1 intelligence for spirituality. By knowing which intelligences are dominant in you, you can know a very important information about you that would help you to develop relationships, to choose your career, and many other important decisions. Myers and Briggs categorized all personalities, all human beings, in terms of 16 personality types. These personality types are based on the theory of Carl Jung. They tell you, once you find out your personality type, they tell you whether you are an extrovert or an introvert, whether you are a sensing kind or intuitive kind, whether you are thinking kind or feeling kind, and whether you are judging kind or perceiving kind. Their free online test is available. Anybody can take it and find out their personality type to know themselves. Joe Harry model is a very useful tool that can help you to improve your self-awareness, to improve your communication and interpersonal relations. So what is this Joe Harry window model? So this model divides your knowledge about your different feelings, motivations, abilities in terms of these four panes. The one that is known to you as well as known to others is called open. There is a second pane which is not known to you but known to others. That is your blind spot. And by knowing more about it, you can save yourself from repeating certain kinds of mistakes. This tells you about your biases. The third one is known to you, but it's not known to others. So this is something that you have purposefully hidden from others. And finally, the fourth one is neither known to you nor known to others. So this may have some information that if you learn how to find out, may tell you something very important again about you. SWOT analysis is a very popular tool which is used in multiple contexts, and it can be used to make even your career decision. It basically relates your strengths and weaknesses to the opportunities available to you and to the threats that you may have. Ikigai is a Japanese word. It literally means reason for being. This Japanese concept strives to find a balance between your spiritual side and your practical side. To find your ikigai, you need to find a cross section between four attributes of your life. And those are what you love, what you are good at, what can be paid for, and what the world needs. If you make your career decision by first finding your ikigai, not only you will be successful in terms of earning money, but you will also have fulfillment, and it will be based on a purpose, a real purpose. And meditation helps you to know the deepest sides of you. So depending upon your choice, you can choose one of the four kinds of meditations: Hindu, Buddhist, Taoist, and Sufi. So now let's move from knowing yourself to love yourself. Let's try to understand the same two questions about love yourself. Why to love yourself and how to love yourself. Let's first spend some time on why to love yourself. What do you see in this picture? Do you see an old lady or do you see a young lady? I'll give you 10 seconds to see. So, if you focus on this part, the nose of the old lady is basically the chin of the young lady. And what this example shows us is that we can relate to the observation made by Plato, that beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. And this also helps us to see that how we can learn to love ourselves. Sometimes to love ourselves, we need to look at ourselves with new eyes. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. And to fall in love with yourself is the first secret to happiness. When you love yourself, you are happy. And when you are happy, you're beautiful. What makes a person beautiful? If we go beyond the physical appearance, what makes a person as a whole beautiful? Being grateful, compassionate, and joyful makes a person beautiful. And these are attributes of people who love themselves. And therefore, loving yourself equals beauty. So let's see how to be grateful. To be grateful, appreciate what you have in life. Sometimes to do this, you will need to shift your focus from what you don't have to what you have. But when you do so, you will find that there's always, always something to be grateful for. How to be compassionate. In order to be compassionate, you first need to recognize suffering. To do so, you may have to put yourself in others' shoes and imagine what it means to be this other person in this particular situation. When you begin to recognize suffering, you will develop a better understanding of suffering. And once you understand suffering, it will create a desire in you to alleviate suffering. So being compassionate always starts with yourself. You need to first practice compassion with yourself. And when you are being compassionate, you are not only making others happy, but you also make yourself happy. As put by this beautiful quote by Sri Dalai Lama. How to be joyful? To be joyful, appreciate little things in life and sometimes be happy without any reason. Let's now move to the next question, which is accepting yourself. Let's understand accepting yourself again by answering these two questions. How to accept yourself and why to accept yourself. I'm going to play a music for you for 1 minute. This music is Vivaldi's Four Seasons, Spring. First, let me know if you are able to hear the music. It should be starting now.
Ma'am, I'm not able to
Just
hear
give
you.
a second. Is it audible now?
Yeah, yes, ma'am, it
Okay,
is.
sure. So please listen to this music. It is played for you to see the harmony that is between the sur and tal. Okay, give me a second. Are you able to hear me still, Soumitra?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. All right. All right, thank you. So, this beautiful composition by Vivaldi has harmony, and it has harmony at two different levels. It has harmony between the silence and the sound, and a harmony between a low pitch and a high pitch. Of course, the video also shows beautiful harmony of nature. Harmony does not mean an absence of challenge when you talk about in terms of humans and their lives. Harmony basically means that having a balance between your challenge and your ability. So let's read these beautiful quotes to understand the significance of harmony. He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe. And this beautiful quote by Mahatma Gandhi: happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. So, how to accept yourself? To accept yourself, you need to first know your conflicts and then resolve your conflicts, and at the same time develop resilience. How can you know your conflicts? When we talk about conflicts, conflicts can be your internal conflicts and external conflicts. Internal conflicts are when there is a clash between any two of your beliefs, feelings, desires, motivations, expectations. And external conflicts are when one of your belief has a clash between another person that you're dealing with. So in order to know your conflicts, you first need to know the root cause of the conflict. What is it that is clashing with what? To resolve conflicts, you need to learn how to communicate effectively, how to negotiate amicably, and how to consolidate comprehensively. To resolve your internal conflicts, you need to learn how to prioritize. You need to sometimes learn to choose bad from the worst. And between two important matters, you need to choose something that is wise in the long term scenario. And not all conflicts are resolvable. So you need to develop psychological resilience. And to do that, you need to develop a sense of purpose, accountability, and confidence. And this will help you to maintain your harmony and develop your resilience. So far in this section, we saw the details of the three principles and the three practices that make life happy, successful, and prosperous. Let's summarize the three principles here. The first principle is love of truth liberates us. The second principle is love of beauty elevates us. And the third principle is love of harmony integrates us. And these three principles, when translated in terms of practices, it can make life happy, successful, and prosperous. And these three practices are: number one, know yourself to go from ignorance to knowledge. Love yourself to rise from despair to hope. And number three, accept yourself to move from conflicts to cooperation. In the next section, I'm going to share with you the examples from my own life where I have used these practices to overcome some of my own challenges. Before I describe my challenges and how I have used these practices, let's first see what can you know about yourself. All of us have four dimensions to our personality: physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. These are your pies or PIES. You can know yourself in each of these dimensions. Excuse me. I'm going to share with you some of my challenges, taking an example of one of each kind, and tell you how I use these practices or how I still am using these practices to overcome, address my challenges. I start with the physical dimension. I've always been overweight, but at a few instances during my life, this became a bigger issue. When I was doing my PhD, my weight became a reason for a physical illness or a physical condition. It's called plantar fasciitis. The word plantar basically means the foot, and fasciitis means the inflammation of the fascia that runs from the heel to toes. This condition was so severe that it became impossible for me to walk beyond a few steps without causing excruciating pain in my lower legs. And I also lost my sleep. Naturally, both these factors affected my productivity and my research. And the stress of the loss in my work in turn worsened my health and my sleep. It became a cycle. So let me share with you how I used these three practices in terms of the exact steps that I took to overcome this challenge, to lose 12 kg in 7 months, and to complete my PhD. So the steps that I took for going from fat to fit, I first of all figured out what were the food that were causing me trouble or worsening my symptoms. I eliminated those food and I introduced healthy food and drink options that would nourish my body and my health. I enrolled in a yoga course, and this helped me to build flexibility in my muscles, to build strength in my muscles, and to induce relaxation and better sleep. I created balance between my activity and relaxation. Another important point that I learned from my harmony, from my love of harmony here is I had two important matters at hand. The first, my health, but the second, my work, my research output. And the worry of one was feeding into the other and causing the situation worse. I told myself that it was my health which was more important at that point, and it was not okay for me to expect myself to be as productive as I would be if I were healthy. The moment I accepted this, I began to heal. And to summarize the single lesson, the most important single lesson that I learned from this challenge is that when I'm mindful of every moment by being aware of my breath, it reduces my stress and it promotes well being. And this important lesson that I learned can be summarized in terms of a single word, a beautiful Arabic word called nafas. It means breath. Sometimes it also means soul. In intellectual dimension, my biggest challenge was when I was choosing my career, I had more confusion and less clarity. When I was in my school, I always liked mathematics and physics. I particularly enjoyed physics because It gave a promise to understand the nature of the physical universe. But I did not know if that was enough to choose your career. I did not know if such a career option would give me enough financial independence. At the same time, I had a lot of peer pressure and family pressure. Because of this, I made a decision to pursue engineering as my career. It turned out that I did not do well enough in my 12th to be enrolled in an engineering program. Even though I wanted to do physics, I love physics, because of the peer pressure, this felt like the biggest failure of my life. And I remained in denial for some time. I'll share with you now what steps I took to overcome this challenge. I figured out by probing deeper that I was only fixated onto the idea of engineering because I had no clue about what engineering was like. I found ways to revive my original interest in the subject. I began to form new habits. I exposed myself to read popular physics articles, to read interesting books such as by Feynman, and this really helped. I achieved harmony by balancing my perception and my reality. The lesson that I learned from this challenge can be described aptly by this single word, Japanese word kaizen. Kaizen means making tiny improvements on a daily basis to make a big change. I learned to make tiny improvements every single day to see a significant change in me in a due course of time. I had maximum number of challenges in my emotional dimension. I'm going to give you three examples, the three challenges that I faced at the age of 8, 18, and then at 25. And I'll share with you how I changed from being a misfit to a misfit. I was always a distraught child. My parents were very open and provided me every opportunity to flourish. But I came from an environment, a community that was orthodox. Women were not encouraged to study beyond a certain point. They were married off at an early age. They were expected to dress conservatively, talk conservatively, not have any real opinions, and definitely not express them if they had any. This caused a fear in me whenever I thought about my future, whenever I thought about freedom in my future. I was a loner till I was 18 years of old. I can safely say that I did not share my heart's content till I was 18 years old. This happened because I never found anyone surrounding me who would care about what mattered to me the most. At the same time, what occupied others did not interest me. But this became a challenge because I began to think that I am not normal because everybody seemed to be having common interest among themselves and common talks among themselves and seemed to be enjoying, whereas I seemed to feel lost. When I was 25 years old, I had found true love. This person and I had a common value system, a common vision and dreams for life. We understood each other. We inspired each other to do our best. But we came from two different religions. And having our parents on board, having their consent for this relationship, which meant the world to us, was the toughest proposition. Let me share with you the steps that I took to overcome these challenges. I recognized by knowing myself what is it that is lacking in me in terms of emotional satisfaction. And after knowing that, I distanced myself from negative people and I made proactive efforts to find people who would support me, who would encourage me, and who would enable me to progress. And I resolved my internal and external conflicts. Let me give an example of one internal conflict and one external conflict here before I go to the next challenge. When I felt as an 18-year-old or as a teenager that I'm not normal, I never fully believed that thought of mine. Because if I did, I wouldn't be here. So instead of believing that thought of mine, I kept looking for the right kind of people who would make me feel okay, who would help me validate who I was. So this is how I took care of this internal conflict. And when it was a time of crossing the cultural barrier for my marriage, I anticipated what external conflicts can rise, and I took care of those. The lesson that I learned from this challenge is how to see beauty amidst imperfection. In other words, I learned to see beauty in my so called misfit nature. And this can be summarized beautifully by another Japanese word, a single word called wabi-sabi. It means finding beauty in imperfections. And coming to the spiritual dimension, I have been a warrior. I am still a warrior. But hopefully, I'm transforming into becoming a warrior. As a 20-year-old, I used to worry a lot more. I used to worry about every trivial issue by imagining the worst possible, the most negative possible scenario. This affected me in two ways. It drained away my energy and it affected my focus on the task that was at hand. When I was 27 years old, an incident changed this side of me in a good measure. But that was a tragic incident. I lost a closest friend of mine in a road accident when he was only 28. His passing away helped me see life in a new perspective. It helped me realize the significance of having life. Let me share with you the steps that I took to overcome, or rather, to continue overcoming this challenge because I still haven't completely overcome it. I realized that whatever we fear losing is insignificant in the face of death. And this perspective helped. I began practicing mindfulness. I am learning to accept that loss is a part of life. A lesson that I learned from my spiritual challenge can be summarized beautifully by a single word, a Serbian word, merak. It means a sense of oneness with the universe in finding simple pleasures. I'm learning by practicing mindfulness how to experience bliss by sensing your oneness with the universe. Let me finish this session, this section, by a disclaimer. I'm a work in progress. But by practicing these three principles of truth, beauty, and harmony, I feel that I am a truthful, beautiful, and harmonious work in progress. So, let's recall now the golden question. The golden question was how to be happy, successful, and prosperous in life. And let's summarize what we learned in terms of the three principles, the three practices, and my own challenges and my story of overcoming those challenges. Knowing yourself empowers you to be your best in your body and your mind. Be excellent in your chosen field. Build good relationships and be happy and content. Loving yourself helps you to find and appreciate beauty in yourself and in others. To be grateful to life for everything. To be kind and loving towards every being. Accepting yourself enables you to resolve conflicts inside and outside of you, to be effortless in thought and action, and to be harmonious with nature and with your nature. By following these three practices, can one be without any guilt at the time of death? In addition, to be happy, successful, and prosperous in life? Let's try to find out if there are other evidences which tell us anything about this. The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying is a book written by Bronnie Ware. She was a nurse for many years, working with dying patients in a palliative care department in a hospital. She interviewed hundreds of people who had only 2 or 3 weeks of living, and she compiled a list of top 5 regrets of the dying people. And those top 5 regrets are: I wish I had lived a life true to myself, not worked so hard, the courage to express myself, stayed in touch with my friends, let myself be happier. These 3 regrets tell us that if we follow the 3 principles and the 3 practices that we looked at in this talk, those are not only 3 steps to happy living, but also happy dying, or dying without regrets. And those 3 principles are: know yourself by going from ignorance to knowledge, love yourself by going from despair to hope, and accept yourself from going from conflict to cooperation. When I think what would matter the most to me at the time of my death, my answer is Samitra, is there a problem?
Ma'am, I think after the question, I wasn't able to see any answers. If you have
All
any,
right, all right, all right. I'll just share my screen again. There was some problem.
yeah, yeah, sure.
Can you see my slides now?
Yes, ma'am. I can
Okay,
see that.
I'll go to the right place.
Yeah, yeah, I can see this.
Right, thank you, Samitra. So the 3 steps that we looked at do not only ensure happy living, but they also ensure how to die without regrets. That is, know yourself, love yourself, and accept yourself. And when I asked myself what would matter the most to me at the time of my death, my answer is how deeply I love and how deeply I was loved. And what enables me to love deeply and be loved deeply is knowing myself, loving myself, and accepting myself. The universe only pretends to be made of atoms. Secretly, it's made of love. So, my single takeaway for you is conduct everything with love. Thank you. My talk ends here, but I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to those who have nurtured me with their love. To begin with, my parents for loving me unconditionally and for giving me a sky to fly. My other parents for loving me as their own daughter. My life partner, Rishikesh, for teaching me true meaning of love, for helping me know my truth and for helping me live my truth. My dearest friend Jatush, for helping me finding beauty in me and for helping me how to love myself. Unfortunately, he is not in his physical form today with me, but he has taught me a lot while he was here. The bundles of my joy, my kids, for teaching me a completely new dimension of love, and Dr. Manoj K. Samal for illuminating discussions on science, management, and spirituality. Thank you. I am now open to taking the questions. Thank you, all of you, for listening to me very patiently. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving this profound talk and like not only explaining the principles, but uh, the way you have experienced them firsthand in your life. I think Kumar sir is asking if we should start recording now. I guess we can. We also have another recording taken by someone in Matrix, so that would have the Q&A as well.
It's perfectly fine. It's all fine with me. And I'm open to taking questions.
Yeah. So if people have any questions, they can type it out in the